Hello and welcome to the ParentNet podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. In each podcast, we'll be tackling questions that parents are asking about family life, parenting, work life, and so much more. So join us on this journey of discovery together.
Hello and welcome to the ParentNet podcast. My name is June and I'm your host for this episode. In today's busy world, it's easy for parents to get caught up in work and routines and sometimes miss the small moments that shape our children's values and character. Joining us today in the studio is Eugenia Tan, mother of two lovely children. We are privileged to have her teenage daughter, Evangeline, in the studio with us as well. So today we will hope to hear from this mother-daughter duo about the culture of conversations that have been established in their home, as well as some of the habits and principles that have helped to instill confidence and independence in their children. So welcome to our ParentNet podcast, Eugenia and Evangeline. Could you share a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, it's so nice to be here. I'm Eugenia and I have two lovely children, Evangeline, who is 20, and Elijah, who is 18. I am a divorcee and have been single parenting for the past 16 years. I currently hold two part-time jobs, one as an office manager and the other as a pastoral staff in church with the Family Life Ministry. For me, growing up, mealtimes were really functional events where everyone sat down and just ate in silence. Nobody talked, nobody shared their day, and we pretty much grew up in isolation without much emotional support, even though we were all at the table. And I think perhaps, growing up watching the American family sitcoms of the 80s and watching some of my own friends' families, it really shaped my views in thinking that, hey, when I started my own family, I wanted to create something different from what was my own experience. In Singapore, food is so very much part of our culture, and really every catch-up or meeting always happens over a meal, right? A space where not only food, but intentional conversations bring nourishment to the body and soul. And I recently read this statement by Strahan Coleman, and this really captured this idea. At the shared table, life is enabled and laughter, joy, grief, and acknowledgement find air. When we sit at any table, relationships can be healed or severed. Life can be celebrated or mourned.
Wow, I love that quote. What about Evangeline? Tell us about yourself.
So I'm Evangeline. I am the SID 20-year-old daughter, and I am currently interning at Focus on the Family Singapore as part of my last semester of mass communications at Ngee Ann Polytechnic. So I think that this is a topic that is also very close to my heart because I love meeting people, and some of the most meaningful conversations that I've had have happened over meals. I think that having conversations over mealtime, it really is just such a casual context that softens people's interactions with one another, and I found a lot of encouragement but also being able to engage meaningfully with people through these contexts.
Inspiring indeed. And Eugenia, I actually could relate to what you talked about, right? About mealtimes when growing up was being functional to you. And, even though you're in a shared space, there is very little of that sharing of heart, sharing of stories. And also you mentioned you looked at other people's mealtimes and the difference struck you, right? And it's wonderful how you have turned that into an intentional point within your family. I'm just wondering what made you believe, how did you come to believe that mealtime conversations are so important for children, their development and their growth?
When I saw it in a sense in the shows or in my families, I realized this is really the space where relationships happen. I really saw mealtimes as a great platform for the family to connect. And I really found this family ritual to be so critical to our family life. Mealtimes for us have always been device-free and about eating together at the same time. And this has taken various forms as the children grew. In their toddler years, it was a platform to build skills like self-feeding and staying focused on the task of eating, and also help build the foundation of what mealtime routines look like. When the kids were older, meal times was really a space for us to connect. After everybody's done with a busy day of various activities, we can all come together and connect, share about the day, ups, downs, or just funny stuff that has happened. Even in the school days, especially in the primary and secondary school days, the kids were really, really busy with CCAs, with tuition, with classes and stuff like that. And actually, dinner times also became a space where we could do family devotions, where we could encourage each other in our faith journey. Then meal times with extended families and with friends also then taught them about mealtime etiquette, and it gave the children opportunities to learn conversational skills, right? As they interacted with different people, with different age groups, sometimes with other kids, sometimes with just older people. It might seem like something really simple, but there were so many interesting dynamics that we explored in each season.
So I'm hearing that meal times were quite an essential part of your daily connection, right? Especially you said that the kids could be in primary or secondary school. This is one place and time in the day where you can gather and to be intentional about that together time and not just take it as, we are in the same space and that's it. You also mentioned that it's also a space for social activities, almost like social learning to take place, right? Because even though it's a habit that you began in your family unit, it sounds like you are also inviting others, like friends or even maybe relatives, extended family, into that space and then allowing that dynamic learning to happen. Yeah. So maybe we can hear from Evan. How did this mealtime ritual, impact your personhood, your sense of growth, sense of connection, especially in today's very digital and online world?
I think that I can definitely see the fruit of learning conversational skills. Something that I notice about myself is that I actually feel quite comfortable interacting with adults. And I think that that's something that not all my peers can relate to, because growing up in a setting where, you attend family gatherings or family friend gatherings and you talk to your parents' friends, it makes you comfortable to engage with people from a different age group, even though they might be different and engage with you in a different way. You're so right for bringing up the point of connection in an increasingly digital world, because I think having mealtime conversations really showed me how important connection is. And something about social media that people always talk about is how it's used to connect different people. But I think the reality is that social media can only connect you to a certain extent. And in the end, when you're on online platforms, people are only presenting versions of themselves or limited sides of themselves. And it's really when you get to have in-person conversations that you are able to engage them in a meaningful way. And more than that, to learn how to engage with the world in a meaningful way. I had a mealtime with a young girl who was around 8 years old. And I remember when we sat down, the first thing that she did was pull out her iPad, because she was just bored. And when her parent asked her to put away the iPad, she actually responded with a lot of frustration and in a way where she was really trying to really just get out of her boredom in getting out her device. But I think to me, that made me quite sad to see, because it's like the device was her only resort and she didn't know what it meant to engage with the real world, to connect with people through conversation. So I really think that by placing importance on these mealtime conversations, it really did help me to engage with the real world and to stay present even in that increasingly digital world.
I think that story about the 8-year-old is unfortunately quite a common sight these days, right? Even as you were describing the scene, it made me recall just yesterday we were at a food court and there was a table of kids. And the minute one device was brought out, then slowly another device came out and then all the conversation stopped. Everybody was just kind of looking at what you were doing, one child was doing on the device. And it's really quite a challenge, I think, for many parents of young children to really be intentional about setting a new habit. Once gadgets take over and dominate the space, the mealtime space, it can be really hard to dial back and then change gears in that sense. I'm wondering, like, even for yourselves, did you face any challenge in first setting up this family habit from the beginning?
Actually, for me, setting up the habit was easy because I had already done this from the get-go, even before toddlers. The minute they were like able to sit upright at a table, they were already in like the baby chair. They would have their meal in front of them, and then they would be like given the opportunity to learn how to eat and stuff like that. And there was never a device or entertainment that was given to them during those times. So it's always been that way for them. And I guess in that sense, they don't know better, right? That, oh, actually, I could have had entertainment. Yeah. But I think that for me was really a deliberate choice to then, meal times do not require entertainment to a certain extent. Meal times, we can do other things during meal times. Yeah. So really establishing that routine was actually really easy because I had started really early.
Yeah.
I think the challenge came during the silent years, which is what I would coin them, which happened around the time when the kids reached puberty. They suddenly one day woke up and redrew, and their responses became like single word answers, right? So, how was your day? Okay. And you're kind of like, oh, wow. And then you can ask further questions and the response would still be single word answers. And they were like physically present at the table, yet just emotionally really withdrawn. I mean, I really struggled through that season because, all this while we've always had this rhythm. It was always fine. Things seemed to be going well. And then suddenly one day it kind of like all just went south. I was really quite discouraged during that season because I was like wondering, okay, what has gone wrong? Have I done something? Are they offended about something or upset with me about something and stuff like that? But it was a season that I kind of had to just kind of wrestle through and just keep pressing on with the mealtime routines, in a sense, the lack of enthusiasm from them.
Yeah, I'm facing that now. The silent years.
Yeah.
And it's indeed a tough season to find yourself in. And sometimes I rely on either my elders or my youngest to kind of like keep the conversation going. So certain child personalities may make it a little bit easier to deal with. Or maybe if they're younger, then they're a little bit more enthusiastic still about this. But thanks for sharing so authentically, right? This is something that as parents, even though we may have been intentional at setting this habit, we also have to be willing to embrace the seasons as they come and not be thrown into too much disappointment or upset when the child, goes through puberty and goes through their own season of life in that sense. So what about you, Evan? What were some of the more difficult moments that you had?
From my perspective, if I'm being very honest, I cannot remember much about what happened during those silent years. So there'll be silence for me as well on that side. But I do think that naturally the quality of the conversation depends on how alive we are, in the sense that when you're tired, it's just harder to be present, to be engaged with the conversation. And I guess that's kind of what happens when you're in your teenage years, when there's so much happening internally, but also externally in the different friendship changes, in navigating secondary school life. And sometimes you just don't really know how to articulate yourself or to express yourself well. And that's why when you are asked a question and all you know how to say is, okay, good, fine, and things like that. And I think at that age, you also might not really know how to emotionally regulate yourself. So when you're tired, all you want to do is just sit there and eat your food and not respond or have to think further about how your day has gone. But I think that is something that we should still put in effort to. For example, for a work or a school meeting, even if we're tired, we still put in effort to show up and really to be present. Then what more like in family, we should also be able to try our best, no matter what energy level we are at.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Evan. It's like taking responsibility and knowing that you have a part to play, right? And not just mommy, trying her best to be present, to cook up a delicious meal, and then to, be interested about your day. I'm sure that Eugenia probably appreciated your efforts as well. Some days we are just not at our best. Even as parents, we may have our rough days as well. And some days I find myself like, oh, I just want to cook up in bed and just call it an early night, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like when your teenagers want to talk to you and want to engage with you, you're like, wow, today is the day and I should bring my A game, right? Yeah. So it's really a learning process, I think, for parent and teen. So Eugenia, it seems like this mealtime conversation habit has really helped you and your family grow grounded and develop a set of your own family values. How did you intentionally guide your children in such values while giving them space to grow and also form their own views on things?
I think for me was really starting young. So when they were young, I was already mindful that I was trying to build a foundation for them. Like a lot of things as we were sharing over the mealtime was also about value sharing in terms of what was right, what was wrong, what does acceptable behavior look like, how should we treat people, having consistent routines so that they know what to expect. So a lot of these things actually happened quite organically over mealtime, right? Sometimes as we share our day, we'll be able to share our own life stories of what we experienced when we were growing up, how we dealt with some of the things that we encountered. I remember a time where Evan was having like some friendship issues, and then I could kind of like just share with her my take on it. Like, sometimes much as we would love to have like a lot of friends, but if the friends demand you to be a person you're not, then perhaps you need to relook whether these would actually make good friends for you, right? If they're unable to accept you for who you are. And I think it's in these little things that then, your values, how you see the world actually just show up. And it's not really an intentional, I have a value lesson for you today, and then you teach it. I mean, it's kind of in the sharing life and sharing your experience that the values actually show up. And I think also then about modeling consistently. I think for me, I was always very, very mindful, in a sense, practicing what I preach. If I said, kids, this is what we need to do as a family, then I was prepared to also then do it myself, right? So if we're going to say it's a device-free meal, then my device also goes off the table, like we can't practice double standards. Because really, I think the kids are always watching us and they actually want to see the authenticity in us as they were like growing older, then about adjusting my way of interacting with them. Yeah, I mean, when they were growing up, I took a really like autocratic, just do what mom says because I'm the adult and I know better. But I think as they got older, I really had to recognize that mode of parenting had to change and I had to move towards a more consultative approach. I mean, you were talking about how I can give them space, right, to make their decisions. And I think really that started with me then putting aside my own agendas, and also then trusting that whatever values I have taught them growing up would show up in their decision making, and that I could no longer, in a sense, control as much. To just be willing to hear them out, what are their thoughts on it, how are they processing it. For me, I would then ask them, but please give me the space to then also share my perspective and hear me out. Don't just say, oh, mom, you're thinking it's old-fashioned, it's so archaic, it's like, we are so out of touch of this world, in this generation and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think it really was like this whole two-way street where it wasn't just me adjusting my approach and my mindset, but it was also a willingness on their part to kind of hear me out, understand where I'm coming from and the experience that I have gone through, and then coming together to then find conclusion. That final decision, I always tell them, we can agree to disagree. We don't always need to have a final decision that is mine. That means the final decision is we can discuss all we want, but actually it's going to be my final decision. But for me to also then, after hearing them out and said, okay, I might not 100% agree with it, but I'm willing to work with that. I think for me, there was one instance that really stuck in my head. So my son wanted to drop Chinese tuition. I was like, no, we can't drop Chinese tuition. You know, we are like an English-speaking family. Does not speak Mandarin.
The sky will fall.
Yeah, the world will come to an end with no Chinese tuition, you know. But he was very adamant. He said, Mom, the tuition is not helping me. I want to drop it. And in spite of my strong reservations, I said, okay, if you feel so strongly about it, I will let you drop it. And in my mind, I was like mentally prepared, okay, even if he fails the subject, it's okay. Hopefully there'll be another subject that he can use for his O-level result. But you know, he proved to me that what he said was accurate, because he actually did his Chinese and he got a really good grade on it without any tuition.
A miracle, actually.
Yes. I mean, and I was kind of like blown away. But I mean, it was a learning lesson for me, right? Even though in my mind, I was like, this is impossible. He's going to fail the subject with no like tuition. But he really proved me wrong, because he knew that because he had made the decision, he was going to like work for it to show me that it can be done differently. Yeah.
It shows that he was really prepared to take ownership.
Yeah.
And come what may, right?
And
I'm glad he did the best that he could, right? And it turned out well for him. And I really like what you said. It's really in the small moments. And it's really through the small conversations when your child meets with a challenge, like you said, friendship problems. It's in those moments that open up that space for you to share your own life stories as well as your perspectives on what's really important. Maybe Evan, we can sort of hear like how this panned out for you to share your own views as well to Mom.
Honestly, I've been so grateful for how open my mom is to hear our input. And I think for me, coming from an Asian culture, even though sometimes she says things not trying to impose them on me, that is somehow how I receive it, because in my brain it's like, oh, we need to obey our parents. But I think as I grow up, I'm also learning that the input that she gives is more of a suggestion, and it's her trying to give her advice from her life experience, and that there are actually really valuable lessons that I can learn and I can pull up from there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to follow exactly what she says, but rather to give weight to the principles that she's sharing and to take ownership of my own decision from that. In terms of how the values that she has taught us has translated into how we live, I would say that this whole idea of having meaningful conversations and engaging people has really impacted me to see people a different way, and it has made me more relational as a person, because I think that if you're having a meal with someone and they're right in front of you, it's like you could just go through a normal meal and maybe make small talk here and there, but leave never really knowing about that person. But I believe that in each and every person there is like a whole wealth of stories and experiences to learn from and to be encouraged by. And for example, now in office, I've been trying my best to meet various people to hear out their stories. And I think that this has really been such a joy for me, because you actually get to know the person. I could have gone about my whole internship without even meeting anybody, and I could have had highs and buys and small talk here and there, but I would never have really gotten to know them, and even to see them more as human beings, to really value them for what has made them who they are today. These values are demonstrated through really practical things like learning how to listen more than I speak, and coming into conversations trying to understand the person more rather than trying to be heard. And this has really brought a lot of value into my life and my relationships.
I'm so inspired, just hearing you, a very young adult that you are, and yet coming to such a mature understanding of human relationships, especially communicating around a table. It was really great to have you both with us. I'm sure our listeners are inspired and encouraged as well. Before we let you go, do you have any last words of advice that you would like to share with our listeners?
I think for me is start small and find encouragement as you progress on the little things. Don't give up even when things get tough. Things don't happen overnight. So just be patient and give it time. Yeah. Those are the two things I tell myself all the time too.
something that's often said is that Singapore is materially rich but relationally poor. And if not for my upbringing, I wouldn't know what it means to engage meaningfully with people. So I've really seen how the reason why my life is relationally rich is because it started at home. And so I think I would really want to encourage parents to likewise foster this culture of what it means to be a person who's outward facing, who knows how to connect with people and even to hold space for their stories and to just learn from other people's experiences. And I really think that this can be done and facilitated so well under the context of mealtimes. And of course you can get a good makan in as well.
Which all of us love.
Yes, we all love it.
Thanks once again for being here with us. So parents out there, remember to take a small but important first step, okay? Just by showing up well at your dinner table tonight, perhaps you might be surprised and the wonderful conversations that can result from that. So thanks once again for tuning in to the ParentNet podcast. For more of our parenting resources, do head over to family.org.sg/subscribe. And if today's episode resonated with you, do remember to hit the follow button to stay connected. You can also leave us a review or remember to share this episode with a friend or someone from your community. And that's all we have for today. Do keep tuning in to the ParentNet podcast to learn and grow in your parenting journey.